Sign 1. When silence feels like rejection. Most people say they are independent. They say they do not care what others think, yet their emotional state often tells a different story. A message is sent and there is no response. A good effort goes unnoticed. An idea is shared and nobody reacts. In those moments, something subtle happens inside the mind. Silence begins to feel like rejection. The Stoics understood that the human mind has a tendency to fill empty spaces with assumptions. When there is no reaction from the outside world, the imagination rushes in to create explanations. Perhaps they did not like what I said. Perhaps my work was not good enough. Perhaps they do not respect me. None of these thoughts are facts, yet they appear quickly and quietly begin to influence how you feel about yourself. Marcus Aurelius warned himself about this exact trap. He reminded himself that the opinions and reactions of others are events that exist outside his control. Yet the interpretation of those events belongs entirely to him. The problem is that most people do not stop at the event itself. They attach meaning to it. And when silence appears, they translate it into disapproval. Think about how often this happens in everyday life. Someone works hard on a project and waits for recognition that never comes. A person shares an idea and receives no feedback. Another posts something online and repeatedly checks whether anyone noticed. The mind becomes restless not because something negative happened, but because nothing happened at all. This discomfort reveals something important. When silence begins to disturb your peace, it often means that part of your sense of worth is still connected to external acknowledgement. The mind expects proof that what you did mattered. Without that proof, it begins to question the value of the action itself. Stoic philosophy approaches this situation from a completely different angle. Instead of asking whether others noticed, the Stoic asks a much more powerful question. Was the action aligned with reason, integrity, and personal standards? If the answer is yes, the absence of recognition becomes irrelevant. Epictetus spoke often about the danger of seeking confirmation from the outside world. He observed that once a person depends on the approval of others, their emotional stability becomes fragile. Praise creates temporary elevation. Silence creates doubt. Criticism creates distress. In each case, the person has surrendered control of their inner state to forces that are unpredictable and constantly changing. The Stoic solution begins with a shift in perspective. Silence is not rejection. Silence is simply silence. It carries no inherent judgment until the mind assigns one. When a person stops interpreting the absence of attention as a verdict about their worth, something remarkable happens. Emotional independence begins to grow. This does not mean becoming indifferent or disconnected from others. The Stoics did not advocate isolation. What they taught was the difference between appreciation and dependence. Appreciation allows you to receive recognition with gratitude. Dependence forces you to seek it in order to feel complete. To break the habit, begin with a simple internal practice. When your mind starts interpreting silence as rejection, pause and return to a different question. Did I act according to my values? Did I give honest effort? Was the action guided by reason rather than by the desire to impress? If the answer is yes, the action has already fulfilled its purpose. The value was in the act itself, not in the reaction it produced. This shift is subtle but powerful. It moves your center of gravity from the outside world back to your own character. Instead of waiting to be seen, you become someone who acts because the action is right. And once this perspective begins to settle in the mind, another habit becomes easier to recognize. It is the quiet urge to explain yourself to everyone, as if your decisions require permission from the world. Sign 2. The habit of explaining yourself to everyone. There is a moment that reveals more about a person's inner state than most people realize. It happens when someone makes a decision, takes an action, or expresses an opinion, and immediately feels the need to explain it. Not once, not when clarification is necessary, but repeatedly. Almost as if the decision is not allowed to exist on its own unless others understand and approve of it. At first glance, this behavior appears harmless. It can even look polite, responsible, or considerate. Many people believe they are simply being transparent or thoughtful. Yet beneath the surface, there is often another motive operating quietly in the background. The explanation is not only meant to inform, it is meant to protect the decision from judgment. The Stoics were deeply aware of this human tendency. They understood that the mind often seeks reassurance that it has chosen correctly. When that reassurance does not come from within, it begins searching for it in the reactions of others. A long explanation becomes a subtle request for confirmation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that a person who acts according to reason does not need an audience to validate their actions. The act itself carries its justification when it is aligned with virtue and sound judgment. Yet most people struggle to accept this idea. When someone questions their choice, the instinct is to defend it. When someone misunderstands them, the instinct is to correct the perception. When silence appears, the instinct is to clarify before doubt begins to grow. But this habit has a hidden cost. Every time you feel compelled to justify yourself unnecessarily, you quietly send a message to your own mind that your decisions require approval. Over time, this weakens your sense of authority over your own life. Instead of standing firmly behind your choices, you begin negotiating them with the opinions of others. Epictetus spoke directly about this danger. He taught that once you allow external opinions to determine whether your actions feel legitimate, you place your peace of mind in unstable hands. People change their judgments quickly. One day they praise what you do, the next day they question it. If your sense of certainty depends on their reaction, your confidence will constantly rise and fall with the crowd. There is another reason this habit is so powerful. Most people are uncomfortable with being misunderstood. The idea that someone might interpret their actions incorrectly creates tension inside the mind. The urge to explain becomes a way to eliminate that discomfort. If everyone understands me, then everything will feel settled. Yet the Stoics approached misunderstanding in a very different way. They recognized that complete control over how others interpret you is impossible. No matter how carefully you explain yourself, some people will still disagree, misinterpret, or judge based on their own perspective. Trying to control those perceptions only drains energy that could be used for something far more valuable. The Stoic response is simple but demanding. Instead of investing energy in constant explanations, invest it in consistent action. When your behavior reflects clear principles over time, your life begins to speak for you. The need for repeated justification slowly disappears because your actions become your explanation. This does not mean refusing to communicate when clarity is necessary. Wisdom knows when explanation serves a useful purpose. The difference lies in the motive behind it. Are you explaining to inform or explaining to seek approval? One strengthens your position, the other weakens it. A practical shift can begin with a single pause. The next time you feel the impulse to defend or explain a decision immediately, ask yourself a direct question. Am I clarifying the situation, or am I trying to secure acceptance? If the answer reveals that you are seeking reassurance, resist the impulse for a moment. Allow the decision to stand without defense. Let the action exist without the need for approval. What you may discover is something that Stoic thinkers understood centuries ago. A decision guided by principle does not need protection from opinion. And once a person begins to rely less on explanation for validation, another deeper pattern starts to appear. It is the subtle tendency to adjust who you are, depending on who is watching. Sign 3. Adjusting your identity to fit the room. There is a quiet habit that many people develop without ever noticing it. It appears in conversations, in social situations, in workplaces, and even among friends. The habit is simple. You enter a room and begin to observe the atmosphere. You listen to how people speak, what opinions are accepted, what attitudes receive approval. Then, almost automatically, something inside you begins to adjust. Your tone changes slightly. Certain opinions remain unspoken. Parts of your personality become more visible, while others quietly disappear. Nothing dramatic happens on the surface. The conversation flows normally. People seem comfortable. Yet when the interaction ends, there is often a subtle feeling that something about the encounter was not entirely authentic. Many individuals interpret this behavior as social intelligence. They believe they are simply adapting to the environment in order to maintain harmony. And sometimes a degree of flexibility is indeed wise. Human interaction requires awareness and respect. But there is an important difference between adjusting behavior with intention and adjusting identity out of fear. The Stoics paid close attention to this distinction. They believed that a person's character should remain anchored in stable principles rather than shifting with the preferences of the crowd. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that a person who changes their values in order to gain acceptance slowly loses the very thing that gives life its integrity. The reason this pattern is so difficult to detect is that it rarely feels dishonest in the moment. It feels safe. Social approval offers a sense of belonging, and belonging is something the human mind naturally seeks. The discomfort appears later, often in the form of quiet dissatisfaction. You leave a conversation and realize that you did not express what you truly believed. You agreed with something simply because disagreement would have created tension. You shaped your presence to fit the expectations of the room. Over time, this habit can become deeply ingrained. Instead of asking what you truly think, the mind begins asking a different question. What response will be accepted here? Slowly, personal identity starts to revolve around external reactions rather than internal conviction. Epictetus warned about this exact form of dependence. He taught that the person who adjusts their character to gain approval places themselves in a fragile position. The moment the environment changes, the sense of self must change with it. This creates instability. One group encourages one version of you. Another group rewards a completely different version. The mind becomes divided, constantly shifting in search of acceptance. The Stoic alternative is not stubbornness or arrogance, it is clarity. A Stoic seeks to understand their values so deeply that those values remain steady regardless of the social environment. This does not mean speaking harshly or rejecting all cooperation. It means that your character is guided by reason rather than by the emotional pressure of the moment. Seneca described this kind of stability as inner alignment. When a person's actions consistently reflect their principles, something remarkable happens. Social approval becomes less important because the person no longer relies on it to determine their worth. They are not entering rooms in search of validation. They are entering rooms with a clear understanding of who they are. Developing this stability begins with awareness. Notice how often your opinions change depending on the people around you. Pay attention to moments when silence replaces honesty, not because silence is wise, but because agreement feels safer than authenticity. Then ask yourself a simple question. If no one in this room had the power to approve or reject me, what would I say or do differently? This question does not demand immediate confrontation. It demands honesty with yourself. And that honesty slowly rebuilds something that validation-seeking quietly weakens over time. A stable identity that does not bend with every shifting opinion. When a person begins to anchor their identity in principles instead of approval, the mind gains a new kind of strength. Yet even with that strength, another challenge still remains. It appears the moment criticism enters the picture, because the true test of independence is not how you behave when everyone agrees with you. The real test begins when someone openly disagrees. Sign 4. When criticism has more power than truth. One of the clearest signs that a person is still seeking validation appears when criticism enters the room. Praise may feel pleasant, but criticism reveals where your inner stability truly stands. Many people can receive compliments with ease, yet a single negative opinion has the power to occupy their mind for hours, sometimes for days. Think about how often this happens. 10 people may appreciate what you do, yet one person questions it, and suddenly that single voice becomes the loudest one in your thoughts. The mind replays the words repeatedly. You analyze the tone, the intention, the possible meaning behind the comment. Even when you try to move on, the memory returns. It is as if the criticism has been given a special authority over your peace. The Stoics recognize this pattern as one of the most dangerous forms of emotional dependence. When a person's inner state is influenced so strongly by criticism, it reveals that part of their sense of worth is still being negotiated with the outside world. Epictetus explained that people often confuse two completely different things. One is useful feedback that can help improve your actions. The other is judgment that reflects someone else's opinion, mood, or personal perspective. Most individuals do not separate these two carefully. They treat every criticism as if it were a final verdict about their character. This is where the problem begins. When criticism is interpreted as truth rather than information, the mind reacts defensively. You begin to question your abilities, your decisions, even your intentions. The comment may have lasted only a few seconds, yet the emotional reaction can linger far longer. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to examine criticism with calm reason instead of immediate emotion. When someone challenged his actions or questioned his decisions, he would pause and ask a simple but powerful question. Is there something here that can make me better? If the answer was yes, he accepted the lesson without resentment. Improvement was valuable regardless of who delivered the observation. If the answer was no, he dismissed the criticism as noise rather than allowing it to disturb his inner balance. This approach requires discipline because the human mind is naturally sensitive to rejection. Social disapproval once had real consequences in ancient communities where survival depended on belonging to the group. That instinct still lives inside the modern mind, even when the threat is no longer real. The Stoics did not try to eliminate this instinct. Instead, they trained themselves to respond differently to it. Rather than reacting emotionally, they examined criticism through the lens of reason. Not every opinion deserves space in your mind. Not every judgment reflects reality. Many criticisms are simply expressions of someone's personal perspective, influenced by their experiences, their frustrations, or their expectations. When you allow every external opinion to shape how you see yourself, you hand over control of your identity to strangers. Your emotional stability becomes dependent on unpredictable reactions from people who do not share your values or your understanding of the situation. The Stoic solution is not to ignore criticism completely. Wisdom requires the ability to learn from honest feedback. The solution is to change the role criticism plays in your thinking. Instead of asking whether someone approves of you, ask whether the criticism contains useful truth. If it reveals a weakness you can improve, accept the lesson with humility. Growth is never an insult. If the criticism offers nothing but opinion, let it pass without resistance. This shift transforms criticism from a threat into information. It removes the emotional weight that validation-seeking attaches to every negative comment. Over time, something powerful begins to develop. Your sense of worth becomes anchored in your effort and character rather than in the changing reactions of others. And once a person reaches that point, the final step becomes clear. There is a Stoic rule that removes the need for validation at its root, creating a form of inner freedom that no opinion can shake. Sign 5. The Stoic rule that ends the need for validation. There is a point where recognizing the signs is no longer enough. Awareness reveals the habit, but awareness alone does not dissolve it. The mind can understand that it seeks validation and still continue doing it. This is why the Stoics insisted on something deeper than observation. They insisted on a rule, a clear principle capable of reorganizing how a person evaluates their own life. The rule is simple, yet demanding. Place your worth only in what you control. At first glance, this idea may appear abstract, but the Stoics treated it as the foundation of psychological freedom. Epictetus explained that human suffering often begins when we attach our value to things that exist outside our control. Reputation, praise, recognition, approval, admiration. These are reactions produced by other minds. They cannot be commanded, guaranteed, or stabilized. Yet most people build their sense of self on exactly these unstable elements. They measure their value by how they are perceived. They feel successful when they are praised and uncertain when they are ignored. Their emotional state rises and falls with the unpredictable judgments of the crowd. The Stoics refused to live this way. They understood that anything dependent on external approval is inherently fragile. If your peace depends on what others think, then your peace belongs to them. Your emotional balance becomes a reflection of their moods, their expectations, and their opinions. Marcus Aurelius returned to this principle repeatedly in his private reflections. He reminded himself that a person's true value is determined by the quality of their actions and the integrity of their intentions, not by the attention those actions receive. Whether the world notices or remains silent does not change the nature of the act itself. This insight shifts the entire framework through which life is evaluated. Instead of asking whether others recognize what you do, the Stoic asks a different question. Was the action guided by reason, discipline, and honesty? If the answer is yes, the action has already succeeded. Its value is complete within the act itself. Praise does not increase its worth. Silence does not diminish it. Criticism does not erase it. This perspective produces a form of independence that cannot be taken away by external reactions. When your self-respect is built on the quality of your choices, you no longer need constant confirmation from others. The action itself becomes the reward, but this principle only becomes powerful when it is practiced deliberately. The mind has been trained for years to look outward for validation. Reversing that habit requires conscious effort. The practice begins with a change in daily evaluation. At the end of each day, instead of asking whether people approved of you, ask whether you acted according to your values. Did you speak honestly? Did you maintain discipline when comfort tempted you to withdraw? Did you treat others with fairness even when it was inconvenient? These questions reconnect your sense of worth to something stable, your own character. Gradually, the need for validation begins to lose its influence. Praise becomes pleasant but unnecessary. Silence becomes neutral. Criticism becomes information rather than judgment. This is the freedom the Stoics pursued. Not the freedom to control how others see you, but the freedom to remain steady regardless of their reactions. When a person lives according to this rule, something changes in the way they move through the world. Their actions become calmer, clearer, and more deliberate. They are no longer performing for approval. They are simply acting in accordance with what they believe is right. And that is where true confidence begins, not in the attention of the crowd, but in the quiet certainty that your character does not depend on their applause.